Nightmare on Elm Street's one of those interesting things that is just so infamous that I think for a lot of kids, it's almost like a rite of adolescence or something.
What elevated it so much and what kept it around was the creation of a villain that you can't run from. So many of the other horror movies, horror franchises gave you something that was completely grounded in reality, where, you know, as long as you had your own legs and, you know, a good pair of shoes, you could haul ass. With Freddy Krueger, it was a matter of trying to stave off the inevitable, and that sooner or later you have to face your nightmares.
It was such an original idea. I mean, the thought of someone being able to harm you while you sleep is just horrifying. You're so vulnerable, you have no control. And then on top of that, the character they created was just iconic. There was no way around it.
There's kind of a delicious nature to his evil. He kind of takes such joy in it, and it almost puts you in the audience on his side, as opposed to in the victim's side.
No.
Freddy Krueger is charismatic with more than just his weapon. The character itself is an amazingly frightening, compelling character that as a fan I love, and as a producer it was really important. If we are guys who are making our living making horror films, this is the best one that you can get.
Ready or not, here I come.
I looked at him as a mystery first, to try and figure out where he came from. I found that Freddy had very little in the way of a background and a mythology to him. We knew that the parents had killed him, and that the return to the nightmare was a vengeance for that, and that instead of going after the parents, he goes after the children.
In all the other nightmares, you don't really explain why Freddy is actually after these kids.
Right behind you.
What makes this particular reimagining so much more special is that we do give reason to why Freddy's doing what he's doing. It's a great reveal at the end that you actually figure out that Freddy is the person you thought he was.
This dress was always one of my favorites.
I think that the darker it got, or the more based in somewhat of a reality, the more weight the project and the story has. Some of the campier aspects kind of came about in the later sequels. And there's a kind of a kitsch element to that I know a lot of people love and appreciate, that kind of Robert brought to the role. But that's not really what the film was about.
It's not really one-liners, it's not really winking your eye and doing this. This is a guy with a razor-sharp glove who wants to just brutally destroy you for what your parents did.
I can't, in good faith, go out and make a Freddy Krueger movie that feels like it's a sequel to the last ones that you saw. We have to create the franchise that is our own. And that begins with Freddy Krueger and how that character is portrayed.
You have a villain that only one actor has ever played. So in a remake of this movie, you truly are recreating this film and this character.
For us at Platinum Dunes, Jackie was the only person we ever wanted.
I saw the screen test for playing Rorschach, and I'm like, that's the guy. I mean, he's pretty sick.
We'd always wanted Jackie Earle Haley, and we went after him hard on this movie.
Where I first heard that people were even thinking about me for this role was on the internet. And it was fans suggesting that I might be right for this role. And my immediate reaction was like, that's kind of cool.
He embodied everything that we wanted. Fans are aware of him. He's nominated for Academy Award. He's a brilliant actor.
We had seen some stuff on Watchmen. We'd all seen Little Children and loved him from his earlier films.
Instead of trying to build off of that whole franchise and continue with the same guy, you almost have to start over, and that's what we're doing here.
Oh, God, no. Just me.
It's just like such an amazing, iconic character. I mean, it was just an absolute honor to be offered the role and to get to go and play Freddy. It's pretty cool.
Found you.
When they finally closed his deal, like, everyone in the production office cheered, because there's a big difference between having an actor like that elevates things and maybe someone who could have done a good job with the role.
Jackie's obviously an amazing actor, and he's really good at doing dark stuff, but I think he's also quite funny. I can't imagine anyone else doing it. I think he's perfect for it.
When he has that makeup on and he's screaming at you and coming at you with knives, it's been very easy to play that fear.
This is just a dream. I'm dreaming.
Freddy Krueger is definitely a fun character to play just because he's so way out. I mean, he's so not of this world. Just the whole larger-than-life aspect of this character, it drew me.
He really does justice to Freddy Krueger. And he brings something unique. He brings something with his own voice that expands on the character that we haven't seen before.
Casting a guy with that kind of pedigree sends a message to the audience that we're serious about making a seriously scary movie.
This was kind of a cool process of getting in here and trying to figure out how to make Freddy my own, but yet, not get so far away from what Robert did. Robert did like this amazing job with Freddy over the years. He's made him who he is, this iconic, malevolent boogeyman. And Robert did it in such a way where there was a lot of comedy involved, and it was both scary and funny. And I think now what we're doing with Freddy in this new way is still kind of trying to be true with the things that piss him off, the things that make him so rageful, the killing boogeyman that he is.
When I was looking to recreate Freddy Krueger, I looked at all the things that we knew about him just on the surface and tried to find a deeper mythology or find a deeper reason for why they made him become so iconic. Why the fedora, why the sweater, why the glove? In placing him as a caretaker at a preschool, furthermore a gardener, I began to find deviations from that whole hat, sweater, glove that made sense to me, that applied some base logic to why he became the character that he is now. The gardening hand claws that he used, landscaping, the preschool suddenly turned into the glove.
This won't hurt one little bit.
The sweater actually came from something from the mythology of the Pied Piper. The term pied meant stripes of contrasting colors. Finding that allowed us to seed some more mythology into the sweater itself by saying that, here he is, he's come back for your children. So all that tied together, and we realized we've made sense of this, so why abandon it?
This is an iconic character, and audiences are going to be expecting to see certain things, especially when it comes to wardrobe. We're going to give it to them.
For me, the iconic symbols of the film are the glove, the hat, the sweater.
I think we would have been crucified if we had not put the sweater, the hat, or the glove in there. I actually think kids would have gone nuts. Let's not self-implode by changing these iconic elements.
If you get rid of the hat, the glove, and the sweater, I think it's not Freddy Krueger. At the end of the day, it's like you can't stray too far. You can show that sweater to almost anybody and people will go, oh, that's a Freddy Krueger sweater. You can see the claw and be like, Freddy wore that. It makes Freddy Krueger who he is.
We did several fittings on the hat, several tries on the sweater, and the glove. These guys slowly and meticulously put this thing right to where it needs to be. One of the things that we did that was a bit different is the makeup. Freddy now has a bit of a different look that's probably grounded a little bit more in reality. It looks more like an actual burn victim, but at the same time too, they kind of put in a little undertones of boogeyman.
Everyone decided that we were going to go after the idea that he would look like a real burn victim. So we hired Andrew Clement, who's amazing.
The makeup stuff can be seen as a skill, but it's very much a talent. It's like being a painter. Andrew's unbelievable.
His drawings were different than everyone else we spoke to. On some level, you have to just jump off a cliff because fans are going to hate it. Initially, they're going to hate it because it doesn't look like they're Freddy Krueger. That's always a difficult decision to make.
When Andrew was designing the prosthetic, he and Sam were using the tools to mold it and talk about it, where the depth was and how thin it could get and what we could do to try and help things. All kinds of things, like his ears. Like, Jackie has his real ears. A burn victim would lose their ears first thing, so how do you balance that?
Looking in the mirror and articulating that makeup and seeing just how well it moves, you start to get a sense of a whole nother being, not even a person, a whole other entity.
Ooh, sounds like fun.
I somehow just take that tone, that sense, and then give it to Freddy to run with.
Tag, you're it.
It's a reality of what can really fit and what can work with Jackie's individual face. There are trade-offs for actor comfort and speed and, where appliances end. Every day we need to have a brand new set of pieces. This is a long makeup. There are a lot of pieces to it, so we're trying to find ways that we can sort of shorten up the time. And one of the ways that we can do this is by doing this contact adhesive. So I'm just gonna put adhesive on both the appliance and his face, reactivate it with alcohol so we can just do large areas at the same time. It's really important for me to get everything really right. When I told people my build schedule, they said, well, it's a burn makeup, you can get away with murder. And I really didn't look at it like that. I want this to be really textural and real, and I'm seeing the lighting and I'm altering the paint just subtly to try and pull out some of those forms based on the way I'm seeing Sam light it. So it's a lot of thinking on your feet.
I'm gonna have to steal Jeffrey Dean Morgan's line when they asked him, so how did you get into the headspace of the comedian? He says, are you kidding? 3 hours in that makeup, I'd come out of that trailer wanting to kill anybody. And the same thing is true for Freddy, man. It's like, I'd go in there, I would sit down. It started at 6.5 hours of makeup. They worked the creative process down to 3.5 hours. it was an hour getting out of the makeup. You sit there for 3.5 hours with these guys meticulously gluing this stuff all over your entire noggin, and the last thing they do is put these contact lenses in your eyes. They're oversized. It really helps to put you in the headspace of Freddy Krueger.
Don't turn away. Look at me.
The makeup's amazing. It really is. You see and communicate with someone who's just so nice with this creepy ass mask on. It's like you can't look him in the eye.
We're actually taking it a couple steps further, and we're actually removing pieces of his cheek, and we're doing a little bit of careful computer-generated technology, and it's going to blow some people away.
That was the next step about how this movie was different from 1984. We were going to affect his face a little bit digitally and do things that they probably couldn't have done back then. And I think that's something that the fans will be excited about when they see the new Freddy Krueger.
No, it's not real.
It's real. I'm real.
What we discovered in testing, and actually as we went through, that really the less light we put on it, the better. And the less light we put on it from the front, the better it looked. And it was also scarier. It's like the more light we just bring from behind and the more we keep the front in shadows, the scarier he looked.
The movies have been around for 25 years now, and everybody knows who he is. Yes, our Freddy Krueger is different and he looks different. But they're coming to see Freddy Krueger. I'm going to see Freddy Krueger, so how long do you hold him back? You don't throw him out there 1 second into the movie, but you start in shadows and you slowly reveal your villain. It's been pretty effective on how we've done it in the movie.
Before we see his face, the fedora is such an iconic image, and it's really about that silhouette. And then every now and then we'll do just that tiny bit of rim light so that you sense his shape, and occasionally it's also about when you see him from the front, it's like getting that little glint in the eyes without really seeing anything else.
Remember me?
Really, at the end of the day, the lighting and all those things don't matter if you can't see what the actor's doing, if you don't feel what the actor's doing. And so with Jackie really able to manipulate that mask, you know, that makes all the difference in the world.
When he gets in those nightmares, you can really see how he really takes on that character. He just takes over that screen, his shoulders come up. It's the size of the character that he really brings to it.
He works well as this character who's of a smaller stature in real life, and now he's bigger than life in nightmares.
You're not real! You're not real! I am now.
I've asked myself, why have audiences embraced Freddy Krueger, this maniacal killer that you can't stop? It kind of gets back to that campfire story. We love to sit around campfires, you know, or at least back in the day, right? Sit around and tell like this scary story, and there was something that was kind of fun and exciting and titillating about being scared. And I think that the same is true for Freddy Krueger. He's kind of like this mythical boogeyman that's also an inside joke to the fans, to the culture. We know that he's fictional, and it's fun to have this sense of dread and fear, and it's almost like, you know, a giddy scream as he's coming after you. It's the only thing that makes sense, right? It's like, why do we like this guy? I mean, it makes no sense.
This character you're going to have empathy for, you're going to hate him, you're going to be scared of him, and it's all what Jackie's done with it. It's multifaceted.
They're making Freddy a monster. They're making him a killer. They're making him just freaking scary, you know? Like, no jokes, no nothing. I mean, he's down to business in this movie.
There's something about the process of building a character that I really find working with the makeup people and the hair people, that there's this process that together we're all really creating a character. As you build this guy along with his backstory and stuff and looking in the mirror, it can become very motivating.
Andrew Clement, who designed Freddy's new makeup, who had a huge weight on his shoulders to take a character that people are very familiar with and change it into something.
I had a huge file folder of all the iterations of Freddy, and one of the very first things that I did when I discovered that we were going to reimagine him is I took photographs of every Freddy that had been done in sequential order, and I put them up on my bulletin board, and I just wanted to see what the arc of Freddy looked like and what kind of latitude people were willing to accept as Freddy and where we could go from there.
Everyone was of the opinion that we wanted him to look like a burn victim. And so when Andrew came in the initial meeting, he also had those same notes. So it was a very quick click. Like everyone was on the same page.
I really think that Andrew absolutely nailed the design. I think the decision on the makeup towards a little bit more of like a real burn victim.
He is supposed to have been burned in the script, so I did want to get a reality of it, but I didn't want to get too real about it. I wanted to get real in a fanciful kind of way.
It's a very scary thing to have your flesh burned off and the eyebrows go and the features go and the nose gets burned off and the ears disappear, and I think that's what Freddy's supposed to be.
When we got designs that we really like, and we try and duplicate as best as we can a 2D design on a 3D face, taking into account the fact that there were going to be areas that were going to be digitally removed. At one point it was just going to be a foam rubber makeup with these add-ons, and then I thought it might be partially foam rubber and partially silicone, where you had some areas that were dried out, some areas that were still supple and fleshy. You know, ultimately I let the design dictate what we used, and that was silicone. Usually takes between 5 and 8 minutes to put the material on.
Get as much coverage as you can with
it. Get the initial rubber layer to set.
The initial coat is done, and that's the most important.
And then we back it up with a plaster bandage, and then we get them out of there.
I hear some people kind of freak out, and then some people just go zen. Luckily, I'm one of the zenners. You just kind of have to go with it.
We hate to have people under a life cast for more than 20 minutes.
That's a silicone life cast of the actor. This is where everything is generated from. The makeup sculptures are all done on this life cast right here.
The thing I hate the most as an actor is gluing something on my face. So I'll let you know how I feel in a couple of months. Spending all that time, you know, the 3.5 hours to get into this makeup and donning the fedora and the glove and the sweater and looking in the mirror. It is very informative and helpful in playing the guy. It would almost be like difficult to just, all right, now play Freddy and just pretend you have the makeup on. You know, I could do it, but it just would feel really wrong and weird.
Putting that makeup on Jackie Earle Haley every day, I think that does affect Jackie, and being Freddy Krueger affects you.
The actors didn't want to see me in makeup until we were like on the set and rolling. You know, they wanted that initial reaction, and so did Sam, to actually be captured on film.
Ready or not, here I come.
Wake up, wake up.
Eric Heiserer, who wrote the draft of the script that we all went crazy for, came up with the concept of micronaps.
What I did was a lot of internet research and a lot of contacting sleep deprivation clinics to find out some of the symptoms and some of the sources. What I found out about sleep deprivation and about the body and the mind is that after a certain number of days going without sleep, your brain will just start to force sleep on you in a way called micronaps.
And a micronap is basically a waking dream or nightmare that will last for a second or two.
You really shouldn't fall asleep in class.
Your mind basically shuts down and you can dream without closing your eyes or going to sleep. And you'll just see things. You'll be wide awake, just walking around, and you can dream. Once you're dreaming, Freddy can get you.
I set an alarm.
Yes, you did. In your dream.
And that's a truly terrifying idea, because if Freddy can kill you in a dream, and if you can dream without closing your eyes, then you're not safe at any time.
You can still be awake, your eyes open, but your brain is in a sleep state.
In the rules of our world with Freddy Krueger means that he can get you. So it doesn't matter how many coffees you've had or how hard you're working to stay up. If you can't stave that off, his physicality just shuts you down, you're doomed.
And what Sam decided that he wanted to do is go with motion control cameras so that you can be in two places at the same time. So you're with the character in the real world, and then they go into a micronap and you're there, and then you come back and forth.
And you're kind of shifting between this dream world and this reality world. They really nailed it in the movie, especially in the pharmacy sequence where Nancy's world is being rocked between her dream micronap world and the reality. And it's just the way it goes back and forth from pharmacy to boiler room, and Freddy's there and then he's not there, and no, it's awesome.
My God, you're bleeding.
I found that it worked really well for the Nightmare on Elm Street story, because then as we escalate the tension and our characters try to stay awake as often as they can, Freddy then can start to get you even when you're awake.
The idea that you don't even have to go to sleep and he can get you, to us, was the next step in A Nightmare on Elm Street.
He can just show up in the middle of wherever you are and go at you. And I realized that was really the hook.
were looking at this character, it was very important that there be a freshness and a newness to him. It's also this character that you recognize and that you know, and that's why it was very important to kind of keep certain elements like the fedora.
It's still such a cool, like, symbolic, everybody knows the fedora. And I think we did elevate it a lot with grounding it in reality.
We didn't go into a store and say, those look like Freddy Krueger fedoras, let's buy 10 of them. Optimo Hatmaker is a hat maker in Chicago. They're amazing, just gentlemen, fabulous, fabulous shop. We told them what we wanted. We actually selected the beaver because everything's different weight, and then he blocked them specifically for us. Cut the brims, everything was done. Had to have the fedora, but hats are also very personal to actors, and it's a whole feel. So we had Jackie in the fittings. He became very attached to a certain kind of hat, and his feel is the weight of the hat as well.
I can tell you that we didn't finalize a hat until we were a month into shooting. You know, I hope no one can tell, but we kept working, trying different hats.
It was actually really interesting to arrive at the final hat, because we had like wider brims to do, you know, stuff that's more dramatic, and everyone's like, just cut it down. I mean, it literally became down to like 1/8 of an inch. Cut it down 1/8 of an inch more. We just like kept trimming and changing the block on the top. And I remember at one point Jackie's like, "You're not changing the hat." I go, "Jackie," you know, held his hand and I said, "Here's the deal. Before we came on this movie, for X amount of years, somebody's been trying to get this project going, and they've been thinking about Freddy. Every level, looking at Freddy, staring at that hat." And I go, "Just because you and I come on doesn't mean we have the best idea for Freddy. We just really have to explore it all." I go, "You might like this new Freddy hat." The hat is very personal, and it can make the character.
And the hat was more about making sure that it looked good on Jackie.
When the makeup came into play and they had the final go-ahead with that, and then we put it on the camera test on Jackie Earle Haley, we had to basically redesign the hat, and even the color changed again. The hat went through a lot of changes, and the aging on the hat, many things. It was a definitely evolving process. Patrick Caulfield, who is my set costumer, is just a brilliant ager and has been doing it quite a bit, and it's a lot. It's a layering of paints and things to get the right glint from the camera when lights hit it. It's putting different layers of texture on it, and also to have some meaning. I don't know if you'll ever see it. It depends how close they get, but we have actually 4 slices that go, they're just little thin slices that go through the hat. Not through it, but just on the edge. And it's like if Freddy had grabbed it with his hands, there's just the ever so slight razor sharp slices in there from that.
The fedora is such an iconic image, and it's really about that silhouette. It's the hat. He's just very mysterious.
One of the things I absolutely adore about Sam and Sam's work in this movie in particular is that he embraces practical effects whenever he can.
This is a horror movie, but doesn't mean that things can't be beautifully shot and cinematography can't be great and the art direction can't be great.
This segment is related to the fire at the abandoned factory where Freddy initially gets burned. There's a couple beats in there where the fire's consuming around him. This will give us an insert of fire coming up around his feet. So we've got an inverted set where we can control the flow of a very slow, lazy fire effect crawling on what will seem to be this floor. And we'll have the stuntman up here on a riser with his feet here. And that way he can be looking as though the fire is coming along his feet. This is not the test rig, this will be the set piece. Camera will not see off of this surface, it's like a close-up of your feet. But instead, we're doing the close-up of your feet upside down. And this is propane, we're just feeding propane, but it's real slow, so it's not like blasting, it's just barely crawling. So it seems kind of hypnotic. And even if they want to go, roll it in for slow motion, it'll seem even slower, like it's starting to crawl up to them. If we want to, we can kind of shake it up so it doesn't seem very repetitious. We can kind of just have it go away and it'll come back and kind of do something. We're just kind of playing around with it. This just gives Sam that moment of, we know the factory's on fire. The next beat is actually Freddy with his jacket trying to fan the fires away from him, trying to just get it off him. So this, just another little cool moment for him to do that.
We're not going for a lot of CG in the movie. The movie is practical. Where we're using the effects predominantly is to elevate the experience of the nightmares.
This is something that has been done before. We've done this before, so it just seemed like an appropriate way of getting some of the beats that Sam during pre-production said there's some cool moments I've seen in different movies. I said we can do that. The only limitations of doing stuff practically is the tolerances of the set, close proximity to the crew, safety for the crew and the actors, and say how big can we get in any environment. No matter where we are, it's going to be, that's as far as we can go with it. And then the CG, it's working together, saying we can give you this much fire, you guys can make it look like that much more and still make it safe and repeatable. The biggest thing is say, well, we didn't lose the set, it wasn't a scare moment, so we can do something over and over again consistently and safely.
When we were looking at the concept of what his face looked like, we looked at some of his wardrobe options, and there was some ideas of trying to really elevate the sweater to something of its own and take it away from what the whole franchise was.
It was going to be a redesign of Freddy, and so they threw some ideas at me. They really wanted to stay true to the fan base and wanted to stay true to what it was. We even played with different colors, so it went through a lot of different sort of ideas on where to take it. And I don't know how many people know, I know the fans probably know this, but the green and red optically actually do something to the brain.
Wes discovered in psychology or some sort of test that bright green and red are the two most jarring colors.
We ended up going back to the red and the green just because of that scientific fact. We tried to keep it true. We just sort of designed it more to the proportions of, Jackie Earle Haley playing Freddy Krueger and, trying to get more in depth. So we did the drawings, we did many fabric swatches of colors, and we tried different sizes of stripes. We made them, we camera tested the actual garments, and we tried different colored pants and did things in low light, highlight to make to the final decision. It just wasn't arbitrary.
We must have tested 8 different sweaters under multiple different lighting conditions, to pick the perfect sweater. It's surprising how dark the sweater is and how much more light we needed that we thought we would need, so it really was a lot of testing on the sweater.
As we were going through that process, it was helpful because you go from point A and wrap all the way back around to where we started, just other than like some subtle touches and really taking down the colors and making it more reality based. It was good that we did that process, but we ended up where we did, which is pretty close to the original.
I like how it's kind of shifted over the years from kind of like a muted red to a much dingier blacky green.
They were knit for us by Judy Graham, who actually did the original Freddy sweater, interestingly enough. She's actually done stuff for me before. I had not realized she had done the Freddy sweater. And she'd even done the giant Freddy sweater. She doesn't really do a lot of stuff anymore, but she was like, if it's the Freddy Krueger sweater, I gotta do it. We brought Judy back, and she was meticulous and fabulous.
I think over the years it's kind of turned into the Christmas sweater. But it's still Freddy Krueger, and it looks badass.
Why are you screaming? I haven't even cut you yet.
Even though the glove's been reimagined, it's similar. It's very similar. You know what I mean? You have to really look at the two gloves and say, okay, this piece is a little different than that. So we've been very true to that.
It was a fine line of like, you want to keep it like the original, but yeah, you want your own flair to it. It took us 3-4 weeks of just concept drawing and another month to make it.
As you can see, it looks like it's mostly copper and steel for the blades. So foundation is copper and steel, so that's what we started with. Each individual piece is hand cut and jagged so that it looks like it was done in a garage. Glove's just your typical leather glove. We burned it, aged it to make it look like it was old and burned. We had to make it where your fingers bend. Each pivot point for each finger has to be done like that so it can have real action.
Pretty similar to what they had before, but it is still kind of re-engineered, definitely made from my hand, very articulating.
The first one we made, we painted them. We kind of patinaed them, and then one day the heat from the steel to the copper transfers slightly different, and it looks actually perfect. We decided, you know what, let's not paint it. Let's leave it the way it is. It gets that purple, it gets that other color in it. Let's just leave it, it looks better. Once we made it, the blades were way too long. We had them, actually, they had been another 4 inches long. Sam came up with it, let's not make them all the same size. And at one point we had one with a thumb on it too. The consensus was, after everybody looked at it, to go without the thumb.
I'm very proud of the way that turned out in our movie. I think we nailed that.
It's actually steel stock. The blades are dull, but they're awful pointy.
There was a lot of times where I was on the set where it's like I was constantly just trying to tuck that thing in, especially as I'm kind of blind in one eye, with those contact lenses. One is kind of milky and fogged over. I can't see out of it, so I've kind of lost my perspective.
We made one out of rubber when we get close to somebody's face, and we made one out of aluminum, which is a lightweight one, but mostly Jackie, he basically wears this one all the time. Jackie's really good with it. We gave him one to take home. He brings it to work, takes it home, puts it on. I think he even tries to eat with it. Probably one of my finer props. I've made a lot of stuff over the years, but it came out really nice.
Nancy was Freddy's favorite. Even as a child, she was a little bit different than the other kids, and because he's different than everyone else, he really connected with her.
What are you drawing?
He used to take her into his cave and paint and draw with her. But I think mostly it was because she's not like the other kids that he connected with her and thought that she was different and special, and she really trusted him.
You know what? I got some other drawings. and they're like really bad drawings, maybe you can help me fix them?
The original Nancy's got a lot of friends. She's sort of a popular girl. She's not like a supermodel like teen that you just don't believe actually would ever go to your high school. She's definitely like the girl next door, and our Nancy's not at all girl next door. She really keeps to herself and is quiet and socially awkward and timid and really doesn't know how to connect with people. And throughout the movie, you see her grow, and she forms a connection with Quentin, and she learns how to open up and reach out to people. And then in the end, you really see what she's made of and really become a strong woman.
You're in my world now, bitch.
Quentin is kind of this nice kid. He's definitely got a crush on Nancy. He smokes a little pot, he pops Adderall, he's kind of a little bit of a loose cannon. His dad's very cold because his dad's the guy who actually threw the gas tank and killed Freddy, so it's like a very butting heads relationship.
You were protecting. From what? From him, from what he did to you.
I mean, that really kind of affects my character. Like, there's a couple moments in the movie where I like snap, and Nancy's trying to calm me down, and I literally like have to throw her off me, and it's like, don't touch me.
Wait! What? Slow down! Stop!
He's kind of an anti-hero. Nancy is kind of an anti-hero. We're not your typical horror movie, like beautiful, 6'4". We're real people in a crazy situation.
Hey, Quentin. Nightmare's over.
I think you can relate to that a little bit more. You want these kids to win.
So you ever get tired of working here every weekend?
Do you ever get tired of coming here every weekend?
Quentin, you coming or no?
Jesse is based on the character in the original that watched Tina fly around the room. He originally was, I think, kind of supposed to be the dumb kid in town, and he's sort of evolved into the person, I think, that really kind of knows what's going on, but it sort of refuses to believe it.
We gotta stop this.
How?
I don't know. Just don't fall asleep.
He's a nice guy, though. He's in love, and I like him. He's been quite easy and fun to play.
Oh, God. No. Just me.
My character, he's the troubled kid who you really want to root for. You sense a lot of issues going on just by looking at him. My character describes his visions and his nightmares of Freddy to Katie Cassidy's character, Chris, and he's just mentally messed up.
They're just dreams. Okay, they're not real.
They're real. He comes to this diner to drink coffee and stay awake, and he just hallucinates sometimes and falls into that dreamlike state and actually ends up falling asleep.
You're not real! You're not real! I am now.
Dean, what are you doing?
Chris is the only character that's so much like the original. Physically, emotionally, my character just happens to be always in the worst situations.
Remember me?
She's just someone going through these tragic, horrific experiences.
I was just patting him.
Obviously, Freddy Krueger coming after you isn't very realistic, but at the same time, it's like you're dreaming, so it is. We've all had dreams where you fall asleep and right before you die, you wake up, and that's what these kids are going through.